Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's second video. We're going to have a look at the USA forecast for today's second video. So as always on a Wednesday, we had a look at the weather for the next 6 weeks in the United States. I should get on that for you in a moment. Just to say that the first video that's released today was our 6 AM UK weather forecast, and we're going to be a 10 to 14 dayer coming up for you later on today as well. Please like, share, subscribe on the videos. Thank you so much everybody for doing that. Right, we're going to start off with the week 1 500 millibar height anomaly for America. It's taking us through the week we're currently in, 15th to the 22nd of May. So you find that the coming week, or this week, we'll have high pressure dominating, above average heights, dominating across the northern and western part of America, with lower pressure into the far northeast. But generally, probably going to be doing something a bit like that. Should be relatively warm up the western side of America, but could be cooler in the east and the northeast. So the temperature anomaly looks like this, significantly above average for these western and northwestern parts of America. Actually, really quite hot, bit of a heat wave going on up the west coast and into the Pacific Northwest in particular. But southeast of that, though, looks quite cool through the southern parts of America. Oklahoma, Texas, for example, standing out with cooler than average temperature anomalies. And it gets a little bit warmer just to the east of that. Then we come into the Midwest and through to the eastern parts of the states, and there it gets cooler again. So around the Great Lakes and into the east of the northeast, we see cooler than average temperatures this week. As far as precipitation is concerned, dry weather through northern parts of America. A little bit of a north-south split, so right away from the west coast to the eastern seaboard, actually, in the northern states, generally on the dry than average side, but further southwards, actually wetter, somewhat unusually, through the southwestern states of America, Arizona, Oklahoma, possibly into some western parts of Texas. We've seen above average precipitation. To the east of that, it turns drier though through the rest of Texas and along the Gulf Coast until we get into the southeastern corner, and that turns a little bit wetter again. And then up the eastern seaboard, looking generally quite dry, except out into the Atlantic. Week 2 will be the 22nd to the 29th of May. Let's have a look at this week then. So lots of high pressure reaching through the northern part of America, right way from the west coast all the way to the northeast, but below average heights, low pressure across the southern and southeastern portions of America. Temperature anomalies, excuse me, for week 2 look like this, a north-south split really. So it's warm up the west coast again from the Pacific coast to the Rockies, and then the northern states looking generally quite warm as well. But come further southwards, and many of these southern states actually have cooler than average temperature anomalies. Now remember, these are anomalies to average. So for example, we've got Florida here, around sort of 1-2 degrees below average, but it'll still be very warm to hot in Florida, of course, because it's always very, very warm there. And like into southern states, Texas, for example, with cooler than average temperature anomalies, but will still be very warm or hot, as these are anomalies to average. So a couple of degrees below average will still be very warm for the southern states. But you can clearly see that there is a north-south split, with the warmest temperatures to average in these northern states and the coolest temperatures to average in the more southern states. And as far as precipitation is concerned for next week, it looks like that, varying from region to region really. So the west coast of the northwest looking quite dry, the southwestern states again looking quite wet, a little bit unusually. Then through the Midwest, it looks generally very dry as well for many of these Midwestern states, before we come into the far east and southeast, and then it gets a little bit wetter, particularly as we come through the Gulf Coast and into parts of Florida. I wonder if that could be some sort of early tropical development. It will be very early for that, of course. Week 3 will be the 29th of May to the 5th of June. Not much change really for the 500 millibar height. Still generally above average for the northern states, still generally below average through these more southern and southeastern states. Temperature-wise, again, not much change there either. So many parts of Northern America looking warmer than average right away from the Pacific Northwest over to the Atlantic Northeast. Come further southwards, we get the cooler than average temperature anomalies, average to cooler than average through many of the southern states there in week 3. And precipitation still looking really quite wet in this southwestern corner, which is very unusual, I think, for these southwestern states. Talking about Arizona, Nevada, you know, those sort of areas, really quite unusual, even into some parts of California as well. Up the west coast, it's actually drier, especially in the northwest, and then again in the midwest, looks relatively dry through there, possibly hinting being a little bit on the unsettled side though as we get towards the eastern seaboard. Week 4 will be the 5th to the 12th of June, so maybe turning more unsettled from the west coast, from the Pacific in this week. Higher pressure inching back up towards Canada, and still this trough of low pressure somewhere towards the far southeastern part of America. The temperature anomaly looks like that, so warmest in the far north and northwest now, rather on the cool side for these western southwestern states. Perhaps just cooling down a little bit out through some of the midwestern eastern states as well, certainly reverting closer to average. And precipitation wise for week 4 again looks pretty wet in the western portions of America, so from the Pacific coast to the Rockies and maybe into the southwest as well, looking quite wet through there. Meanwhile, to the northeast, it looks relatively dry in those midwestern and potentially northeastern states too. Weakening signal though, of course, as we are talking about 4 weeks away. Week 5 will be the 12th to the 19th of June. Well, now it's going rather mysterious, so I was just putting a question mark because there's not much to be deciphered in that week. But temperatures look generally quite warm in most parts of America, probably still hinting at being pretty cool though, or cooler than average in western states, but elsewhere looks generally above average, especially through the Midwest and into those eastern portions of America. And precipitation, so it looks drier now in the southwest, so finally things starting to dry out in the areas where you expect them to be hot and dry at this time of the year. In the northwest it looks a bit wetter, otherwise in the Midwest and into the eastern regions not much of a signal. And then finally week 6 will be the 19th to the 26th of June. And absolutely nothing at all to be deciphered in this week. So just put in question mark. We'll see what the temperature anomaly says. So it is pretty warm across the central and eastern parts of America, closer to average or no signal out west, but most parts of certainly eastern and midwestern America anyway looking pretty warm there as we come towards the last stages of June. And no signal really for precipitation. Possibly hints of being a bit drier in the south, a bit wetter up in the north. But, you know, very, very, very weak signal. Excuse me, as you'll expect, with week 6. Right then, so that's it for the ECMWF forecast for this week. That was just a snapshot of what this model is showing. Could look completely different when we look at it again next week. So any forecast beyond 5-7 days, of course, comes with big health warnings and large pinches of salt attached. We're going to be back a little bit later on with the 10 to 14 there for the UK and for Northern Europe as well. That includes all of red features. Come back for that a little bit later. For this week's extended USA forecast, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.